and you join me in the morning in the woods of Barnsley. Sun is up, it's still quite cold. I think it's about 1 degree at the moment. The birds are singing if you can hear them. And all in all, it's quite a nice, very nice morning. However, as we come to you today from what are very nice, quiet surroundings, other things are afoot, unfortunately, in the Palace of Westminster. Because a lot of you have seen talk of Boris and especially Tories wanting to get rid of the Fixed Term Parliament Act. And essentially, this is quite important because you've got to know what this is before we proceed. So what is the Fixed Term Parliament Act? Well, it's essentially this. It stops governments from holding a random election whenever they want, essentially. And to have a general election, or to call a general election, there must be a majority in the Parliament for it to be actually called. We saw this triggered in 2019. But why is this important to have? Well, predominantly, it's there so that essentially a government cannot call an election when it is most advantageous to them, essentially. So, for example, and this is the scenario and the potential scenario that we are facing. And as you can see, it's quite sneaky. It really is. But, and again, I would not put Boris past trying to sneak this through. So, first of all, in 2019, the Conservatives really won on what was essentially a Brexit election. Lots of people held their noses, especially in the north, for the very first time, and voted Tory. Because essentially they were Leave voters who felt that their vote wasn't being honoured, when in fact it really was. In fact, it was the ERG who were at that time more responsible for stopping Brexit than any other group in or outside of Parliament. And of course, they made fusses constantly about how bad Theresa May's deal was and how it would leave us in the EU still, and this was just unacceptable. But of course, the Leave campaign explicitly ran on a Leave platform that said that they would not leave the single market and the customs union. So once again, you know, this just goes to show you the power of what the ERG had. 22 MPs essentially forced an entire government into the hardest of most possible Brexits it could do. And then, through electing Boris Johnson, essentially forced out all the moderates in the Tory party and essentially installed one of the hardest right-wing cabinets we have ever seen since Margaret Thatcher. Indeed, even probably more far-right than that. So, what happens now with this election, or this potential election, of course, if they succeed in getting rid of the Fixed Term Parliament Act, is that Boris and co, if they wanted to, could call an election at the end of this year. Now, why would Boris and co want to call such an early election when the last one was only in 2019? Well, it's quite simply, very easily, they want another Brexit election. And they want to guarantee, essentially, that they win. And of course, at the moment, you've had the massive problem with the coronavirus. And that is significantly going to damage their chances at the next elections. They know this. They are also terrified of a public inquiry into the coronavirus and what happened, why it happened. Because we've even heard from Conservative insiders themselves that they know they would not come out of this well. So that's one thing that they are terrified of. But, like I say, this is going to be more of a victory lap campaign more than anything else. Because they are going to go forward to the public and say, look how good we did at getting Brexit done. Now that we've got Brexit done, we want to implement our new agenda, which is going to be incredibly hard right. If you don't think that's going to be the case, whew, you know, we're going to see cuts to everything probably going except probably defence, as is the normal way. We're going to see police get a massive chunk of change probably, although it will probably be again taken away from them in the budget. You know, the Tories giveth and taketh away. We're also probably going to see more talk of the levelling up campaign and the shared prosperity fund, which of course we've talked about before is anything but a shared prosperity fund. And the big one, of course, will be Brexit. Because, as we've said at the moment, currently, we are in a situation where we have the agreement. We've agreed it, we've rushed it through, but the European Union is currently studying it. And if they decide they're not going to pass it because of our very recent actions, we will end up in a no-deal scenario, which will be bad for us. And like I say, we've talked about just how bad a no-deal scenario is for the UK. It's going to be an absolute disaster. And Brexit is already an absolute disaster. Like I say, if you've been following this, you know companies and industries up and down the UK have been crying out, going, this is terrible. This is awful. Look, you know, we've lost all our European exports. And partly because of the coronavirus, this has been covered up. But there are a couple of dates, key dates coming up. One of October this year, one in January of 2022 and March of 2022, where we will see essentially the full regime of checks put in. Because at the moment, you have to fill out paperwork going to the EU to follow all their rules. But currently, you don't have to do anything if you're in the EU and want to send stuff to the UK, which is going to be causing even more problems. So the whole thing about this is that if they can call an early election before all this stuff kicks in, they can claim that Brexit has been done, it's been done well when it actually hasn't, and there's all these, you know, essentially dates triggering off that are stopping huge companies and multinationals, big companies, small companies, medium-sized companies from now trading with the EU, making it even harder, making UK companies uncompetitive in the EU, thus essentially shrinking their earnings. And we've seen already from numerous companies how bad losing all that is. So none of this is going to be good. None of this is going to be good. And if they can get away with calling an early election and then conning people into thinking that, oh, Brexit's all done, it's all done and put to bed, when in reality it's anything but over. So as always, thanks for watching. Please remember to hit that like, share and subscribe button down below. And also there are links to my Patreon page as well down below, as well as a one-off donation link called Buy Me a Coffee, where you can, well, buy me a coffee. And thank you to all those people that do support me that way. And as always, we'll see you all next time.